That's right, everybody. We are back. This is the HTML All the Things podcast. This episode is going to be an interview one all about developer education. This interview is going to be conducted by Mike, and he's going to be talking to Max, a professional web developer and online course instructor. If you've learned anything web development related on Udemy, you've likely come across Max's courses, as he has taught over 3 million students and accumulated over 1.1 million reviews across 63 different courses as of recording this, including React, the Complete Guide 2025, and Angular, the Complete Guide. And of course, way more than that, 61 more in fact. Now, the guys are going to be talking all about the evolution of web development education, the role of AI in learning web development, and much more. So if this sounds interesting to you and you want to support the show, you can go and check us out on that Patreon, leave a review or rating on your podcast app, join us in our Discord server, or share this with your friends. And now, without further ado, let's cut to the interview right now.
When is the last time you listened to a podcast about web development, web design, and small business and didn't fall asleep? Yes, we cover web development, web design, and small business, but like actual human beings with personalities. If you're a beginner, we're not going to talk over your head. It's more like asking your buddy for help. We have guests, we have fun, and let me tell you, these two can get off on a tangent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to HTML All the Things podcast. This is Matt Lawrence and Mike Curran.
All right, we're on the call with Max. Honestly, I just want to kind of throw it to you right now, Max. Really appreciate you jumping on and really excited to dive into this really awesome topic, talking about developer education and how it's going to look like in the future. But I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself, tell us what you're working on right now, right off the bat, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm also extremely excited. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm Max. I create online courses. I'm doing this actually since 2016. Before that, and also still, I work as a developer, web developer, because I simply like writing code. I started doing that with 13, I think 12 or 13, and to this day, I like it a lot. And I also like sharing my knowledge, helping others. That's why I started creating courses. And I do this to this day, though nowadays I also, actually this year, I'm also like exploring if there are maybe some other projects I want to pursue, maybe some apps, some software as a service I want to build. Because like after all these years of like releasing courses and not doing too much work on actual projects, that is something I really would like to do again, because I've done that in the past and I would like to like go back into that. So that might be something I also do this year, but that's what I'm doing in the end.
That's awesome. And honestly, I feel that drive to create something as well. Like a lot of times how I work is I do longer term contracts working with companies where I actually do create some stuff, but it's not for myself, obviously. And then I'll have the HTML All the Things podcast where I'll do a little bit of educational content and stuff like that. So I kind of like that balance, but I would love to dive back into creating like apps and SaaS applications, stuff like that. So that I definitely share that feeling where I always want to be just making stuff.
Yeah.
And that's probably why we're creating this podcast on a consistent basis for so many years, and probably why you're doing courses for so many years. Like you've been doing courses for 9 years. You're approaching 10 now. You're going to be 10 pretty soon. I'm curious to get your take on this. So we're going to jump right in here. You've seen education evolve, especially developer education. You've been through like the bootcamp craze that happened, 2020-ish. You've seen the courses evolve from like really long courses to shorter to longer and all that stuff. I'm curious, how has that been? Like, how was that evolution for you? Just in like, in your own words there. And then where do you think it's heading? Like, where do you think the next 2 years or 3 years are going to be like for specifically course creation?
Yeah, it's really funny. I do think about this quite a lot, because I did actually start creating courses, as you said, when they had to be super long, when it was like the wild west of online education, still like not a lot of established platforms, actually no established platforms, I guess. Like Udemy was brand new, Pluralsight, Coursera, they all were pretty new. YouTube works totally different back then. When I started, I actually also started on YouTube, and back then you would simply like create a tutorial series videos where you basically would have a playlist with like 20 videos where you build a project and people would watch this. Nowadays, you would barely get any views for that. So it changed a lot. And also being at risk of sounding old here, I do sometimes miss those days because it was a lot of fun to like have this very raw experience and yeah, this way of doing courses. But yeah, of course, it got more professional with COVID, especially. Of course, there was like a huge influx of people. Everybody wanted to learn to code, and that obviously these were, from a business perspective, great years for educators like me, like lots of people getting into education there. It also meant that courses got a bit shorter, at least on Udemy. They're still pretty big, but now with a bigger focus on business customers and shifting away from like the marketplace, that had this impact, which is good because you can, of course, deliver a higher quality if courses are shorter, because you like have the same amount of time essentially, but you can like focus on other areas of the course therefore. So yeah, it's crazy to see that all that changed in just like 9 years, because you can either view that as a long or short time span, but I don't think it's that long. So a lot happened there. And now obviously with AI and all that, it's totally, it's hard to predict where education and I guess like the entire world of writing code and programming will be in like 5 years. So, but those times also always have opportunities, and it's exciting to be part of them because, well, things are always changing, I guess. But yeah, there is a lot of interesting stuff going on right now, definitely.
Curious question here. I feel like frameworks are evolving fairly quickly. I'm talking like React, Svelte, all
Yeah.
those frameworks over the last few years, especially, where paradigms are being shifted in each framework, like the React server component stuff, Svelte going from Svelte 4 to 5 with a completely different paradigm with runes. Vue has stayed pretty consistent, but overall, like it's other than the composition API change, but like there has been a pretty significant change in the framework ecosystem,
Yeah.
especially from like front end to meta frameworks. Like, how do you keep up with that on the course side? Like, I feel like just full disclosure, I created the Svelte course for Svelte 4 a little while ago, very small scope. And even that was like immediately out of date. So, and I see your courses are getting up to date all the time. So do you just spend like a ton of time making sure you're up to date on all of these standards and then, reinvesting that time into your courses, or there's some other strategy?
Yeah, I do like so of course I kind of prioritize if a course is not getting a lot of traction. I also don't put a lot of focus on it because that is simply impossible. There's only so much time. But for the bigger courses and topics like React, Angular, and so on, yeah, I do of course try my best to like stay updated. I like watch all the conference keynotes, read all the beta change logs, and so I try to really stay updated. And I don't want to be surprised by React 19 coming out and not knowing what will be in it. So, for example, I recently released the second edition of my React Key Concepts book, and I actually started working on that essentially the day where React 19 beta was released. And I try the same for my online courses to really like be laser focused on what's happening there. It of course helps that I do work with most of these technologies all the time, be that for other courses or for side projects, internal projects, and so on. So you kind of stay in the loop, but I do of course also only focus on like the top 5 to 8 topics, I would guess. So and thankfully there are some topics like Node or Docker, which of course also have some innovation going on, but they're not changing radically every year or so. Like like these frameworks sometimes do. But there also thankfully is a bit more stability here now. I mean, like in 2018, 19, we had like all these framework wars going on and a new framework popping up almost every day. So there's a bit more stability now, but still, especially like Angular is also seeing like crazy changes over the last 2 years. And that's also difficult because even if I know that something is new, I can't just like replace the entire course because there are students in that course who are currently taking it. There might be students, especially business customers, who might want to learn the older version. They might not be interested in version 19 or anything like that. I have had complaints by people who tell me, hey, I want to learn Angular 14, not 18. So, and Udemy has no feature that would allow me to like give students a drop down to watch different versions. So I have to balance out that as well. So that is like a constant challenge there. But yeah, it's part of the job, I guess.
It's a heck of a challenge, though. Holy, but
Yeah, it is.
I do like your approach of like, hey, let's focus on these, the ones that are performing the best, and the ones that are obviously performing the best, probably because they're the most relevant, most popular for people to get jobs and all that. So that does keep it down. You're not keeping up with all the latest, crazy frameworks that come out and survive for a day and then die a horrible fiery death. But yeah, that makes sense to me. I kind of want to move a little bit on to the next steps. Like what are you thinking in the future? You mentioned it a little bit with the rise of AI, right? The radical shift in how developers are learning.
Yeah.
Have you started to implement any AI into your courses from the sense of like, hey, I need to teach someone this, or has it changed the way you do courses in general at the moment?
Yeah. So it is a big challenge. I have created like 2 AI specific courses, one actually shortly after ChatGPT was released in early 2023, like a general ChatGPT prompting course, which back then was something that was, well, people didn't really know how to use these tools, and like that added some value there. Recently, last year, I released a course on using AI as a developer, so working with tools like GitHub Copilot, Cursor, things like that. So that's one thing. When it comes to like the React course, for example, or Angular, whatever, I don't really incorporate AI into those courses. Now, Udemy on their platform, it has like an AI chatbot where people can basically like ask questions and then the model will help them also based on the captions of the course and so on. But that's like only a tiny thing, of course. And I don't, so it is something that will evolve for sure. But currently I'm, for example, not using GitHub Copilot when I'm recording a course because I want to really type out the code on my own, like write it on my own, because I explain it whilst I'm writing it. So if I get like a huge chunk of code being auto-completed by GitHub Copilot, I feel like that's actually making the learning experience worse, not better, especially since not everybody will get the same suggestions. So it's not like people can easily reproduce what I get. So, but that may also change in the future, that I feel like, okay, now you have to teach different things there. It might not be so much about the Angular syntax. It might be more about how to build good applications in a more general way. That could definitely change. It's like an entirely new world for me too. So it's something I'll have to figure out along the way. And it's like, it will probably be like a step-by-step process. I do think like, of course, you could also ask the question whether there really is like a need for online courses when you can just ask ChatGPT or any other model, or if there is even a need for developers if those models can write the code. But I guess to some extent that is something only time will tell. But I'm also pretty confident, for example, if you like take books still exist, even though you can take online courses, which are objectively better in many aspects, but still people like to read a book. An online course and being this guided learning experience will very likely always be better than interacting with an AI model where you kind of need to know what to ask for, and where you have to blindly trust that the model will produce correct results. Whereas if there is like a human teaching you in a course, you might have a higher level of trust because of the credentials of the person and so on. So I guess there's that, but it is definitely an interesting time.
Yeah. Just having you talk about it, I realize how early we are in this
Yeah.
aspect. Like it seems like AI has been around for a little bit now, like a few years, but the reality is starting to set in a little bit for us where we're like, we don't know what's happening next year.
Yeah.
Before, I think when it first started, at least from my perspective, I was like, this is something that will enhance developers and that's it. And now with the rapid evolution of it, it could be something more. Like it could be more augmentative, or it could be a way for one developer to do the job of multiple. We don't know.
Yep.
Because of that, it becomes increasingly difficult to predict and figure out a way to teach the next generation, or even like suggest the next generation something to do. Like, do you
yeah.
see, like, if a junior developer comes to you today and asks, hey, I want to get a job in the next year or so, what's the path for me getting there? Has your answer changed at all since the last, 3 or 4 years? Or is it still the same, like, where it was before that?
So of course it's definitely harder than it was like 4 years ago in all the COVID craziness where people got hired almost without any experience. And that of course also was not sustainable. Now I mean, at the moment, I don't really think we're seeing any hiring freezes or layoffs because of AI. It's not that quick just because it's super hot on X and we have like all these billions being pumped into an AI does not really mean that companies are not hiring. I mean, it's always interesting to talk with people that are not from this tech bubble. AI is barely happening for some of them. And so there is that. And I'm very confident that for the next 5-10 years, many companies will not really replace developers with AI, even if they could, which is of course not certain, but even if they could, for regulatory or social reasons, or simply because they are not confident enough. For many reasons, I'm very confident that this will not have an impact. So there is that. Of course, it's impossible to tell what will be the case in 10 years, 15 years. One thing I do feel is an interesting opportunity, if you are willing to like take this risk, is if we do think of the worst case or best case, depending on how you look at it, scenario where AI will really be very capable and will be able to like replace 10 developers with one. If that's the scenario we're heading to, there will be even more power for that one developer that remains, because I don't think we'll ever, or at least not anytime soon in the next 20, 30 years, be in a world where we will blindly deploy and run AI-generated code
Sure hope
and
not.
treat it as a black box. I do not believe in that at all. I will not get into a plane where everything is only controlled by AI. I will not use online banking where everything is controlled by AI. So, and if there are then rarely any developers left who understand that code, the leverage for those who are able will be immense. So that's one thing I'm thinking. If you can like, there is like this skill gap between the people who only know how to prompt but don't understand the code, and the people who have like a deeper understanding of programming and coding and writing code, reading code. And if you get on the other side of this skill gap, I think there can potentially be massive advantages there. But of course, it's not guaranteed. Nothing about this is guaranteed. But that's basically how I look at this for this worst case scenario. And then, of course, there also are scenarios where it will maybe stay on the level where it is right now. It's a helpful tool, but nothing more. That is also possible.
I like that take. I think that it's a cool, logical take rather than, like you said, the X take of everyone losing their jobs in the next year and everyone trusting massive AI systems to run their banking, which just
Yeah,
seems ludicrous to me. But there are legitimately some people, mostly outside
sure.
of tech or mostly not developers, that think that. But still, it's an interesting concept that people are already starting to consider in the early stages of this AI quote unquote revolution.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but you were mentioning like, bridging that gap, going from the prompt engineer per se to understanding the code and being able to edit and, essentially review an AI's code to make sure that it's correct. I'm wondering, as you're kind of learning as a junior developer, as a new developer, and you're starting to use tools like ChatGPT or GitHub Copilot or Cursor, Superman, whatever, how early is it too early to use those tools? What should you be using those tools for? Do you have any takes on that? Like, is relying on it too much too early a anti-pattern for a new developer?
Yeah, so I would absolutely use those tools because you need to be able to work with them, use them efficiently, and like stay up to date with all the developments. Because right now is almost every day that a new model, a new code editor, a new code editor plugin, or anything like that comes out, or that Cursor gains some new capabilities. And I find it important to stay up to date with those capabilities and be able to use it. But at the same time, at least for me, I do also sometimes deliberately turn them off and write some code totally without any AI assistance. Because I realized that when I work with everything AI on for a too long of a time period, I get into this weird behavior where I essentially always just wait for AI to complete my code, even though I know perfectly well what I want to type. It might just be like one line of code, but instead of like typing it real quick, I type like the first three characters, wait for the completion, and review the result I get. And as a consequence, like I saw my skills degrade to a certain degree where I felt like, okay, I'm not really coming up with solutions to problems anymore. I'm just waiting for auto completion. Then I validate the solutions that are thrown at me, but I don't necessarily even question whether that's the best solution or the solution I wanted in the first place. And I think that's like a dangerous path if you are relying on those tools too much and you therefore basically lose skills, or you become a bit less skilled, or you don't gain certain skills you should be gaining. Because obviously, like everything in life, writing code is all about using what you know and staying up to date and like really becoming better and continuing to learn. It never stops, and that's like a danger I see here. So it's really a mixture, I guess.
That's interesting. So I've been feeling very similarly to that. I really do, I feel like I rely too much on my AI tools. And I did do that experiment where I turned them off.
Yeah,
And a few times I felt like I was actually faster without them
yeah,
because of that weird pause, that weird
yeah,
AI autocomplete pause. But other times I felt a little bit lost. And that was a scary feeling because, 3 or 4 years ago, that wasn't even a possibility. You just code. So it's a very good observation and probably something to look at if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I haven't stopped using these tools since they came out, or like I've been learning for a year and I've only learned with the tools, turn them off and see what you can do. Now, in those scenarios, Max, do you recommend also like, you get stuck not even going to ChatGPT, trying to find it on regular, the old Stack Overflow,
yeah.
Google search era? Or do you think like, I guess like, yeah, like how would you go about troubleshooting in that situation? Because sometimes you still need to Google stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, really, like in the old days,
Yeah.
I like put it into Google, find some Stack Overflow threads, and get your solution or steps towards your solution from there. And to be honest, that's still not the worst approach because you do learn a bit more from that than just taking some result an AI gives you, because at least I don't always deeply analyze what I get there. Like if I need to like work with Node.js streams, for example, something I'm not doing super often, like all these stream APIs that are built into Node.js. If I just like quickly get a result, accept it, and move on, I've learned nothing. It's a little bit like driving a car with navigation assistance turned on. You don't really remember the way the roads you took. Like you arrive at your target destination, but you don't really know how you got there necessarily. And the next time you have to drive the same route, you need navigation assistance again because you did not remember the path you took. And it's kind of the same here, that I learn more if I like have to piece it together from 3 different sources, and along the way I learn about these APIs I need to use, and the chance of remembering is much higher for me there.
What do you think the consequences of this are going to be in the short term? And for example, like you and I can talk about turning off AI and do it, but I think the majority of people aren't going to ever turn off their AI tools. And so essentially they're going exactly the route that you're going. They're using navigation. They're never going to get to the point where they're really understanding the route. Do you
Yeah.
think this is going to have negative consequences on the code quality of future applications or just the ability of future developers?
Definitely on the latter, and probably also on the former. I do believe that all the amount of code that is being produced by prompt kiddies or basically people who only prompt and have only a basic, if any, understanding of what they're actually generating, all that code will eventually be there, and it will be part of live applications. And that's kind of what I also meant before. There is this possible opportunity for people who have a deeper understanding because of all the low skilled developers and all the bad code. Now, of course, again, if the future is a world where AI generates perfect code even for complex applications, that opportunity might be smaller. That's impossible to tell. But I do see that there is like a lot of, yeah, this skill gap is essentially really growing. And I don't think this has been the case prior to AI, because there naturally you had to become better to like move up in ranks or build an application on your own. And nowadays you don't really need to do that. If you want to like solo develop an application, you can do that with basic, if any, coding skills. But that's not necessarily a path for long-term success then, I would guess.
Yeah, I think you're correct. And I think what's going to end up happening is there's going to be less and less of the people that can bridge that gap as we progress, as developers retire and the new age of developers goes. Because even for myself, like I feel like it's a challenge going back without tools, even though I did it for 8 years beforehand. I can't imagine someone starting development with those tools and then turning them off and being a productive programmer right off the bat. So they'd have to relearn development. It's a really thoughtful and interesting discussion, though. I'm curious to see where it's going to go. One other aspect of this that I have a hard time wrapping my head around is what I've been seeing is a lot of these AI LLMs, due to the nature of it, have started to develop a little bit of tech bias. And let me
Absolutely.
explain. They have, obviously, they're learning on material, you know, open, public GitHub repos, maybe private GitHub, who knows, code that's out there publicly available. And therefore, smaller frameworks and like new technologies have the inherent obstacle now of having to defeat the LLM almost, or plug into an LLM before even launching, because if someone isn't able to autocomplete your code, all of a sudden you're no longer relevant. So like obviously this benefits React, It benefits Angular, the people that have been established for a while. It benefits PHP, Node.js, but newer stuff has difficulty. Have you seen that in your own like researching education? Have the top frameworks solidified themselves even more since AI has come into play? And do you see any way around that, really?
That's 100% the case. Like, it's super hard for any new technology, even for a new version of an existing framework, I would guess, to become relevant if it's not part of the training set of the LLMs. And obviously, it's not enough to be part of the training set. You have to have a substantial amount of code in that training set to be to be suggested, I guess. So if and you can see that today, if you generate React code and it's not Next.js, but pure React, you will, in my experience, you will not find any React 19 features in there. Like the other day, I actually worked with the context API and it gave me like good old use context hook and everything. It did not give me the new use hook you could use. It did not use refs the way you can use them with React 19. So, and how would it? It's not part of the training set. So unless I like deliberately tell it and like rag that data into the prompt, it's not aware of that feature. So, and that's a huge problem because that can really like slow down or entirely stop innovation and progress. Because as annoying as all these new frameworks and versions can sometimes be, ultimately the web development world nowadays is much better than what like 8 years ago. That's simply, in my opinion, that's a fact. We don't have to worry about supporting legacy browsers. We can easily build complex single page or multi-page full stack applications without a lot of manual wiring up work of like back and front end stuff. We can do all that if we want to or if we need to, but we can't. We have a lot of power at our fingertips with those recent versions and so on. So we got better performance, smaller bundles, and all that is at danger, or future developments are at danger because of the, as you said it, of the bias we get from LLMs. And it doesn't stop at technologies, in my opinion. What about the cloud? What will be suggested? Of course, it's AWS, maybe Azure, certainly not Google Cloud, or leave alone any other smaller provider or anything like Hetzner, or that will not be part of the game, especially since these LLMs are by Microsoft in the end. So maybe then also Google, yes, but if there's like a new cloud provider, no chance at all. And that's also another danger I see. Who's going to guarantee that these models won't be deliberately biased? Because ultimately, take Google search. The top 10 results or top 5 results, I guess, are all ads. So why wouldn't results generated by an AI, not just in the world of coding, but also like anything, shopping, whatever, why wouldn't that be ads? Just more subtle ads. And so, of course, it's easy to get like super dystopian here, and that's not the goal, but the bias thing is definitely a huge problem I see. Even more if there are not a lot of people left that know about how these things work and which alternatives exist and how to self-host something or stuff like that. If you just take and use what the LLM gives you, there is a huge danger of getting the same application over and over again on the same cloud, same technology, and no innovation happening.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about it. I think it is something that could impact the future of development as a whole. And I mean, the future of everything, like you mentioned, it's not just development. I think I'm hyper focusing because that's my world. But I think it's something that could have a significant impact that I don't think these LLM providers are really considering as an issue. And I haven't seen too much hubbub about it as well online because people are just using them kind of blindly and being excited about what they can do. But 5 years down the line, I can see that having a very negative impact on our industry and other industries. And people will probably start talking about it in some way, shape, or form. But I think we've talked a little bit about kind of like the dangers of AI right now for our industry. We've talked a little bit about also the positives. Obviously, you need to use them because they do accelerate your development. I want to kind of pass it off to you a little bit right now as maybe one of the final questions here. New developer comes in, wants to start learning today. What are your kind of top recommendations right now? Like, again, I think you mentioned them throughout the episode, but what would you suggest?
So I would actually probably suggest the same thing I would have suggested 3 years ago. I would not go to ChatGPT and ask, how do I build a website? Because you'll get an answer, you'll just not learn a lot. If you just want to get a website quickly, of course you can do that. You can also use Wix, but if you want to learn how to build one, I would still work with courses, tutorials, books. Doesn't have to be paid courses, of course. Obviously, I do feel like there is an extra benefit of having this high quality guided approach, but there are plenty of great free resources out there too on YouTube, free code camp and so on. So I would still like use resources like that. I would try to build a lot of stuff because that's always how you learn the most. A couple of years ago, it was all about being stuck in tutorial hell. That's still a danger. You want to like start with tutorials, courses, books, whatever, but you also want to get out of them quickly because you'll not be able to learn everything anyway. So it's better to have a solid foundation and then start building stuff, because if you know the basics of React and Node.js, let's say, and you then start building a very simple online shop with authentication, basic checkout, using a database, that'll be plenty of important stuff that's difficult enough to implement and figure out if you've never done it before. And you'll face many obstacles and problems, but that's exactly where you grow and where you learn. And when you then learn about authentication, you'll figure out, oh, there are different approaches. What are the differences? Where should I store tokens, cookies? I guess you don't see where cookies are stored, but where should I store tokens? Or are sessions with cookies better? So lots of interesting, important things you'll figure out along the way. And that is how you will like build more and more knowledge. And of course, then you can also use AI for the answers to these questions. You can't take the old school approach, use Stack Overflow. You can mix it. You can do whatever works best for you. If you do use AI, I would just always, as I said before, question the suggestions and really try to understand them. Don't just blindly copy and paste code. And that is still a good recipe for learning and becoming better, I believe. And that also kind of comes back to what I said at the beginning when we talked, that I would love to also build more projects again, SaaS applications, anything, really also just to like hone my skills to become better and continue growing, because ultimately I got into development because I like it. I still like it. I still like writing code, and you can only become better if you throw yourself into challenges and go beyond what you already know. And building projects, be that serious projects or dummy demo projects, doesn't matter, but that's the best way. And then of course from time to time you can dive into more advanced courses, tutorials, but it's really like the mixture of all these things, in my opinion.
Love it. Love it. Honestly, that's exactly where I would go. The mixture is a really important part of it. I think people get too stuck up on one path and being like, I need to take 15 courses at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's, like you said, that's tutorial hell. And that's going to lead to more frustration than anything. So being able to go back and forth, great advice. Hopefully everyone takes it. I just want to say I really appreciate your time, Max. One thing that I already told Max, but I haven't told kind of the audience, is that you were one of the first people I went to when I first started my web development journey and started learning. I believe I took my first React course with you, and I took a Dart and Flutter course with you that landed me a gig. So again, kind of a full circle moment for me. It's a really, really awesome, big honor to have you on and get your takes on this. I think it's really important to kind of get grounded with the people that are teaching us, obviously, and the people that understand this stuff that we're learning at a pretty high level, to figure out where we are at. Like it's difficult for someone that's first starting out to understand, hey, is AI going to take over? no one really knows, but it's important to take industry experts at their word and just follow some advice and try to just grind it out. Like you can do it. Like Max said, it's the advice hasn't really changed. You have to know what you're doing. And if you're going to be the one that knows what they're doing and the guy beside you isn't, I think it's pretty easy to know who they're going to hire. So appreciate that, Max. I want to pass it over to you, kind of roll out the red carpet. Any links you want to share, any new courses coming out, anything you want to throw at us? What's up with the next part of Academind?
Yeah, so first, it really was a pleasure for me here to be on the show. I really liked this discussion because these are all super interesting thoughts, and I really like discussing them and also hearing like other perspectives. So I really enjoyed that a lot. And then like also, as I said before we started recording, meeting you it's always awesome to meet people who took courses, got a lot out of them, and that means a lot to me. So yeah, that was really amazing. Yeah, regarding links, it's really, you can of course visit my Udemy site, Maximilian Schwarzmüller. You will find me there. I do have a lot of courses there. I do try my best to keep courses updated. I will definitely also keep on releasing new courses. I have a YouTube channel, Academind, also my own channel, Maximilian Schwarzmüller, where you will find hopefully interesting videos. I recently, last week, actually started live streaming on Twitch occasionally, simply because I like that a lot, like diving into technologies, building projects there, and like sharing that is something I like a lot. So all these are great opportunities where I would love to meet people, help people, hopefully. Yeah, so that would be that.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to come and check out your live streams. I like to kind of throw on live streams sometimes when I'm coding. So that's an exciting one. And again, those links will be in our show notes on htmlthings.com. And again, thank you very much, Max. Hopefully we'll have you back on sometime in the future.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
I hope that you enjoyed the interview as much as we did, but it is now time to end. Remember that if you want to support episodes like this, you can do so on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/HTML, all the things, just like these $3 patrons did. Tim from the Web Hacker on thewebhacker.com, Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com, Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com, Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se, Syntaxify from the HTML All the Things Discord server, and Stacy Mosteler from the website swoonworthydesigns.com. Feel free to leave a comment or a review on the platform that you are listening to this on, and we are signing off.
You've been listening to HTML All the Things Podcast. Web development, web design, and small business. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you appreciate that we talk to you like human beings. And we hope you had some fun. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon at HTML All the Things. And on Twitter at HTML Everything. Until next time, this is HTML All the Things, signing off.